Hi, everybody. It's Fridays with Sue and Steph, and hopefully Rachel. That's our goal, to have our
We'll be here soon.
friend Rachel on. So, the first thing that we are going to talk about today, and hoping desperately that people who aren't on yet, but will be getting on any minute, will start sharing with us the things that are working for their kids in the classroom, because so much of what we talk about right now is what's not working. And sometimes there's a little bit of a pivot when you ask your kid what is working instead of what isn't working. That, like, and I don't know if you find it, Steph, like when you shift the question.
Yes, yes. I think that's totally true. It's so easy for them to tell all the things that are that stink. But so I was a senior in high school, and so it's kind of interesting. I think there's a piece to what she said, which was that, of course, when I said, "Well, what's working?" she called out like two of her probably her two favorite teachers. So they're probably really engaging to start with. And I said, well, does it have anything to do with like their prowess or their use of the technology? And she's like, listen, the truth is everybody's had technology issues. But what she has seen work is, I've heard her talk about, you talk about negative. I've heard her talk about how the breakout sessions, like, those are the worst. Like, I hate those. But what these two particular teachers do is, because there are some kids going in and some kids not, when they break them up, they have the kids who are in the classroom work together, because they're seeing each other. So they're not like, oh, well, that one's there and that one. So she's like, it's kind of a natural divide. So the kids there's Rachel. The kids are in the classroom, work together, and then breaking up the ones who are at home. Hi, Rach.
Hi. Welcome. We're starting out talking about what are the wins, what's working for kids on who are still doing remote learning, because we typically focus on this. I mean, there's so much sadness right now, and kids really struggling with mental health as well as adults. But we focus on helping work through those. And maybe for today, we thought we would talk about what are the wins. So Stephanie's talking about Lane right now and what she said. And then if you have anything to add to the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. So Steph, you were saying that what her teachers.
Yeah, her teachers, the ones, of course, it's her favorite teachers to start with. But so there's one piece of having the kids who are, because of the hybrid model, and you have some kids who are in and some kids are out. She's had some teachers take like, well, one kid from the classroom with kids who are home, right, and do it that way. And she feels like that doesn't work at all. She's like, it really works. And whether she's the one in or out, right, she feels like it works better if she's out for that particular class, working with kids who are also zooming in. It's kind of like just leveling the playing field, maybe. And then the kids who are in, at least they're sitting together and working together. So that was one thing she pointed out. The other was, so they have that, I'm sure many, I think, have those owls that follow you around the room. Do you know what those are? So it's some kind of technology where, so if I speak, the owl, it turns toward me. And so if the teacher's walking around the room, the owl is following her. So you kind of have that semblance of, I know other schools have it now. I do know what
does anybody listening know anything about an owl following your kid around in school on Zoom?
Lane's been having these weird dreams lately. No.
Yes. Just put it in the comments. Help Stephanie not feel all alone.
Throw me a bone. So it is this dynamic of feeling like they're there, because it's funny. I'm having a flashback to just being a kid in a class.
No,
thank you so much. Being a kid in a classroom and watching my teacher. It's just that because it keeps you engaged. Just it's kind of like the Bueller when the teacher's just standing in front, not moving. But when your teacher moves around, there is an energy to that. Oh, here, somebody's got a question just about life.
I have a question. My son just did a Zoom oral report about life conflict. He said he was bored and talked about how he misses his old cat that passed. Hug. Oh, yeah, that's really hard. So let's, if you can, Stephanie, put in something there that is working. Ask your kid right now what is working. So
have you heard from like what does Kobe say is working?
So, well, actually, the expert just walked in the house because his in-person class is over, and so now he's home for the rest of the day. You're talking about what's working remotely or what's working in person?
Remotely.
Well, I will ask him in just a second, but I will say that what I believe is working remotely is some teachers have a natural ability, or maybe it's a cultivated ability to teach really well, even in the remote setting. And so his experience was that he has two teachers who he thinks are just as good remotely as they are in person. And so, in fact, that's why he's home, because one of the classes is his French class, and he thinks that teacher is just as good. He doesn't need to be there, and he's got a long break. So anyway, he's home and does the second class remotely. But, you know, there's certain classes I think it's harder to do remotely for a variety of reasons.
And I think it's exactly what Lane said, right? She's got these two, they're amazing, right? They're gifted teachers. And so that there's probably a little bit of halo effect already going on because they like them to begin with, but they're obviously very gifted at what they do.
Yeah.
And that certainly helps in any climate.
So my kid who's in college said to me that the teachers that are working on Zoom are the ones who enjoy teaching. So the theme is
right.
The theme is the same. Like he's experiencing those professors who really would rather be in the lab, and then the occasional who just really is passionate about helping students learn. And so the you know, I guess if you were meant to teach, you're meant to teach on any platform.
Yeah. I wonder if it's, again, I think the technology can be so challenging. And the one thing I have heard, like, I think, what's the expression? I think it's like dual modalities, right? Where you're trying to teach in person and teach kids who are at home, that the teachers have said how very challenging that is. That is like, if you were to line up what is the most challenging, it's trying to do both.
So does anybody on the listening side of this have any wins? We'd love to hear some wins. We'd even love to be able to at some point write about them for teachers to see, because we know all the teachers are trying really hard. Yeah. And if there's something, like I was asking a few kids, and one of them said, unlike Lane, they love the breakout sessions because it's more intimate and it feels a little bit like socializing. So I think there were even some exercises that were kind of icebreakers, so that the kids could relax a little bit and just chit chat. And so that was the thing that one kid said. But, you know, I guess either that experience is very different than the one Lane is having, or just different kids are attracted to different things.
I have one more thing she added. I was just looking back at my notes from her. So the other thing she said was one of these teachers shares all of his notes on the Zoom screen. So you have the notes up there and you've got the teacher. So you're kind of looking at both, or you can refer to something. So she said that also enhances the experience in her opinion. But yeah, definitely moving around the room and hand motions. That was the other thing she said. But really, I speak with my hands, but that's
well. So someone just told me that we should all try standing up when we're on Zoom, because we're so much more animated when we're talking. But the reality is, a lot of people on Zoom, you see them, they sit very static. And so I guess like newscasters are like, they don't move. They sit, their hands are down. But I don't know, like, is it disruptive or is it engaging?
I find it engaging. I don't know. Rach, what do you think?
I would engaging. And I also think that, a teacher in particular would walk around when they're teaching. I mean, for the most part, they don't really sit still. So it seems like that would be one thing to at least keep the kids paying attention.
Right.
That's hard for the kids. And maybe that's why some kids turn off their screens, is because they do want to get up and watch.
But I think that's so... Sorry, say that again, Rachel.
Or play a game on their other.
Right.
I mean, I think it's the screen thing is really hard for self-conscious kids. It's really hard, but then for the teacher, it's impossible if you don't have. And Stephanie and I, every once in a while, have a meeting with somebody who always leaves their camera off, and I feel like it creates an imbalance. Like you're seeing my reaction, and I'm not seeing your eye roll or whatever body language we give over. So I think, for kids, when they say, middle school kids, let them make the choice because it's hard for some of them. But then you have some with it on and some with it off. And I don't know. I think,
like you mentioned, there's the self-conscious issue. I also think that raises a lot of equity issues, because what happens if some kids aren't comfortable showing their surroundings?
Yes.
Or maybe they're not even in their own home. Maybe they had to go somewhere else to do their remote.
It's a great point.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that is a really great point. Well, and that's why I have seen a lot, and I wasn't thinking about the kids specifically. I was thinking about just on the business side. I was reading something, and they were saying like, don't, like what you just said too. Like if someone says, oh, I don't have my camera on it. Like you're not supposed to be like, oh, come on, just put it on. Which is, I tend to say that. I'm like, look at me, I'm in workout gear, right? But
if you're worried about how you look, like Rachel, when you said you were going to blow dry your hair, I felt like, should I let her know that's not a criteria here?
I told her that last week. I was like, that was a criteria. Sue and I are done. This is welcome to our last show, Rach.
Okay, so I just want to share that we have a bunch of giveaways. Well, let's see here. I don't know who this is because I think if you're coming to this from our Facebook group, your name doesn't show up. So also cameras use a lot of Wi-Fi. So if you don't have good Wi-Fi, it's hard to have your camera on.
That is true.
Such a good point. I mean, there's so many components to making this work. Anyway, we have a lot of books. Not a lot. We have some books. I spoke about one yesterday when I interviewed Michelle Eichert, whose new book is 14 Talks Before High School. I'm not getting the name right. I'm so sorry, Michelle. But she's excellent. The book is excellent. So if you're interested in getting into that raffle, email me at editor@yourteenmag.com. I'll put it in the comments. And then we also have books from Chicken Soup from the Soul. Chicken Soup for the Soul. And one of them is a preteen and one of them is a teen. And those books, they would be such a wonderful thing to read with your kids because they're stories. They're stories of people talking about the same experiences your kids are going through. And it's so, they always have a resolution that's positive. So you can see that it gets better. It is the first of the movement of It Gets Better. Anyway, if you're interested in putting yourself into any of those raffles, just email me and tell me which books you're interested in being entered into. And I just put my email in the comments. So send me emails. And then the last thing we want to talk about, and we're thrilled to have Rachel here. Rachel signed up for Destination College. And so we wanted to just find out from Rachel, what about it appealed to you and how old is your kid that you're in it for?
So first of all, I'm really excited for Destination College. I did not realize you had a special podcast as an introduction to Destination College. And I was searching the podcast for the latest podcast. And I also saw the Destination College one and it was fascinating. And I sent it to some friends because even the introductory sort of elements that you introduced on that podcast were so meaningful. In other words, I'm not going through the process this year, but I did last year and I will be next year. I have a junior and a college freshman. But I have a lot of friends and family going through it this year. And one of the speakers said was, this isn't about you. None of this is about. And I think people lose sight of that because it's so personal to the kids. And it isn't. I mean, nobody knows these kids. I think it never hurts, no matter how familiar you are with the process. By the way, I think it's totally changed in the last year even. I think that some of these messages, they're so important. And I'm really excited because I feel like I'm going to learn something new, even though I spend way too much time thinking about this topic today.
Yeah, I mean, in preparing for it, I can't believe how much I've learned, and I've gone through this 5 times. So I would agree with you that these experts are quite extraordinary. I'm putting the link for the podcast where you can get a taste of a bunch of the experts. I also put the link for signing up. And we don't want cost to be, it's $49. We don't want cost to be an obstacle. So email that same email if you need some help getting into it, and we'd be happy to make accommodations.
Rachel, I love what Rachel said about just the intros and those, couple of minutes, because when I think back to things that have changed my parenting, it is those little snippets. It's that minute where someone said something that I'm like, that changed everything. They shifted my head in a way that it then set the tone for all of it. And I think that is so, there is no substitute for that, right? Like if our kids feel like, we're looking at them and understanding them and helping, and like you just said, Rach, like that it's not about that particular kid and certainly not about us as the parent. And if those things, you were able to frame the whole process with those, man, you'd be in really good shape. And there's so much more than that. But I do love that because it's a really trying time for a variety of reasons, right? And there is so much to be learned, but you don't have to even get all of it, right? If you walk away with a couple little pieces, it can make all the difference.
It's about learning and also perspective. And so the speaker said something, and I wish I could remember the exact quote, that it's not necessarily that it will work out for the best, but it will work out. I can't remember what exactly she said, but I thought, yeah, it's exactly right. It will work out. It might work out differently than you expect,
right?
But it will work out.
And what I always think about that comment, because a lot of people say, oh, things always work out for the best. And that really is about how we set it up beforehand. It's not because things work out for the best. Like if we approach college like we approach life, it's that whatever hand we're dealt, we're going to try to make it the best we can. So I have one kid who's in a school that wasn't anywhere near the top, but says he loves it. And I had another kid who said, I liked it as much as I would have liked anywhere. So, it's there, but it's true for both of them. One wasn't probably made for college, but felt like there were no alternatives. And the other one really would have been happy anywhere. So, being able to see that the outcome, the ending up in the right place is not about picking the school. It's about having the headspace to say, this is where I'm going and it's going to be great.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's also interesting, Rachel, I'm thinking about the ages of your kids. Interestingly, so your older one, who's a freshman in college, he applied, you went through the process pre-pandemic, and this one you're going to go, let's hope, post-pandemic. So it's really just the exact ages of your kids is a really interesting one.
Yeah, it is. And because, again, I'm so familiar with people who are going through it now, I think this has been a really hard year. And I expect what's happening now will continue at least for next year. So it is very different. It's a very different landscape than it was. And, all the changes, the test optional is, I think it's really not just because it's good for the kids. I think that the impact it has on even kids who submit their scores. I just think that there's so many more kids applying to different schools now. The quantities of applications are skyrocketing. And so it's just a whole different analysis, and kids can't visit schools. There's so many things that are different. And so it's a lot harder.
And we are, in each of the sessions, we are going to address what's different now. And we're also going to be having a component that's like, lots of times we give and get great advice about things that we should be telling our kids, but our kids don't really want to hear it from us. So we're also going to be sharing tips on how to have those conversations, what best ways to introduce things. We're hoping that we're not that we're sending all of you to the sign up and not having all of you get more nervous, because the real goal is for anybody with a kid in high school to, at the end of 8 weeks, say you feel much better equipped and much more relaxed about the whole process. So everybody, thanks so much for being here with us. Rachel, it was a blast having you on here.
Anytime.
We'll take you up on it. Thanks.
It's true. Have a good weekend, all.